everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about the shutdown state that some horses go into. I want to just start off by saying though that I am not a professional. This video is just made on what I've learned from my own personal experiences and research that I've done. So basically horses go into the shutdown state when like their pain or anxiety or stress is too much for them to handle, and when they can't get away from it or express it, then they go into their shutdown state. Very often the shutdown state is mislabeled. I see a lot of people calling the shutdown lazy because the horse just doesn't do anything, or it's unresponsive, or it's like there but it's not there, but actually there's too much going on and they maybe haven't been allowed to express it. They maybe get punished when they try to express that. I think that's the most common. And then the horse is left with the only thing it can do is shut down to try and get away from that. So basically, my horse, when I first got him, he was from a riding school. When I first got him, he was actually very anxious. But soon I realized there were a few things that he just wouldn't do, and he would not work with me at all. And he just like wouldn't respond to some things. It started with just like when I was leading him, for example. Even when I met him at the riding school, whenever I was leading him, he would just stop and he just would refuse to move. I'd pull and pull or smack and smack, nothing. It just didn't work. He just wouldn't move. That was the first kind of thing I noticed. And then there were just a few other things. It was mainly with groundwork. I noticed that he was just shut down. I'd never learned about shutdown. I didn't even know it was a thing. So when my horse started like not responding to what I was asking him to do, and he would just brace against me when I tried to get him to walk, and he was like just completely zoned out and not there, I had to learn about what this was. So I learned that it was shut down. I still didn't fully understand why he was doing it. My approach to it at the time was very traditional, and I think what we all taught in our riding schools, like the most common traditional way of when your horse is not listening, you make him listen and you will do whatever until he listens, because now he's being disrespectful or lazy. That was kind of sort of the mindset I had to it. Maybe not to the disrespectful extent, but it was still like, okay, now he's not listening to me, so he needs to be listening. So I guess I just pull on him harder to get him to walk, or smack him or whatever, but it just somehow made it worse. And I now know, because it's too much for their nervous system in the first place. That's why they shut down, and you keep adding on that pressure, it's just going to make it worse, So I kind of realized my approach and the way I was dealing with it wasn't really working when I had to stop riding my horse and rehabilitate him from the ground, because he was in pain, which I now know is the cause of the shutdown. I think pain and anxiety, but mostly he was in pain for so long and it wasn't dealt with. And he was punished for his expressing that. I punished him for expressing his pain and discomfort when he said, "I'm sore." I would punish him for it, because that's all I was taught to do. Is, okay, this horse is like, not doing what I'm asking. Now it's bucking or kicking or biting. Now it must get punished. And so he wasn't allowed to express it, and no one was listening, so all he was left with was to shut down. Now I understand that, but at the time I didn't really. But when I could only work with him on the ground, I needed a horse that was actually going to work with me and not just completely ignore what I was asking. Like he would just stand and do nothing, like you couldn't get him to walk, whatever. So I started incorporating treats, actually. That was the first step into the direction of actually helping him through this. So I would incorporate treats and do more treat training stuff, positive reinforcement with the treats, just to have that motivation. At least he can look forward to the food, and just to get him working with me. I didn't, I knew he wasn't working with me to work with me, but I knew he was just doing it for the food. But at least he was working with me, even if it wasn't to work with me. But that was kind of the first step. But I would still, when he wasn't listening, I would still smack him or pull on him. Or if he expressed his feelings, I would punish him. And I don't know how, but slowly I started to notice other things and learn a bit more, that it just somehow led me to realize I needed to stop smacking him. I think it was the ethical. I realized it wasn't really ethical, even though we all taught it. I think that was the first step, but I would still do it occasionally. And then I just slowly started to get lighter with him. We moved yards to where we are now, and I think that's where my biggest mindset change was, when I just realized you don't have to be so hard on the horses. But even though he may not respond to me touching him, you can feel it. Or those horses where you're yanking on them, even though they may not respond, they can still feel it. So I think I kind of realized that. And I found this lady on Instagram, and she made a video saying that her horse chooses when it wants to be ridden. And I thought, that's the biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard. Why would your horse choose to be ridden? Why would it, if it's got the choice, of course it's going to choose not to. But I said that to myself, right? Then a week later, without even realizing it, I was doing the same thing. My horse was going through another stage of, difficulty with tacking up and all that. He was obviously still uncomfortable, and we're still working through that now. He was still displaying behavior, that's like barking and whatever when I'm tacking him up. And I decided, well, maybe sometimes he does it, sometimes he doesn't. Maybe when when I put the saddle on without him biting or anything, or bracing, maybe I'll ride him then. But if he does that negative behavior, then I won't ride him, and I'll see what happens. So without even realizing it, I was doing exactly what this lady was doing, and then I realized it. But I think after that was a few months ago, after that my approach really changed. I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do this with everything. If he wants to work with me, he'll work with me. If he doesn't, he won't. I just started giving him the option, the choice to do things. The choice if he wants to be ridden or not. The choice if he wants a halter or neck rope. Just even on groundwork stuff. I just realized if he actually wanted to work with me, I wouldn't need a halter at all. And he's just slowly throughout the 2 years I've owned him, started coming out of his shutdown more and more. There was the initial, when I stopped smacking him and being so hard on him, he came out of it. And then there was kind of a middle point again, where he was still really battling a bit with it. And then there was now where I've really seen the biggest improvements so far. I obviously think it's been a build-up of all the little things helping him along the way, but this has really just helped him, I guess, maybe to even shift his perspective on, working in general. So when I started giving him the choice he worked with me way more than he did before. He wants to work with me more than when I was forcing him. Like, I'll walk up to him in the paddock and I'll show him a halter in one hand and nothing in the other hand. And he very seldom chooses the halter. He, like, almost always chooses nothing. And then I put the halter down, I leave it, and I call him over. I see if he wants to do something. I try to get him to come to me. And if he does, I know he does want to work. So, well, sometimes he comes to me, but then I try to do other stuff, and he's not really interested. So I just leave it. But so often he chooses to come and work with me. And I think just seeing working with horses as like a friendship, because you always hear it's a partnership, riding it's a partnership, but we forcing them to do what we want the whole time. And that's like the whole reason Sunny was shut down in the first place, was because he was being forced to do something and he didn't want to do it. He was sore and he was punished for speaking up about it. All he was left to do was shut down. He didn't have a voice. So now that I let him tell me things and I let him have a say, like literally like a friendship, like I think that's kind of how I'm trying to see the way I work with my horse, like literally just like a friendship. So he can, obviously with his body language, but he can tell me how he feels and that I listen to him. Then he doesn't feel like all he can do is shut down. So that's basically my personal experience with this, and how there's still some days where my horse is a little more shut down, but he is coming out of it. Like, he is just so much better than when we started. So this is just my journey, I guess, and what I've learned from my own personal experiences. I just really wanted to share this in hopes that it may be able to help you or give you a bit of an understanding or something. I don't know, because I felt like I couldn't find what was going on. Like, I looked on YouTube, obviously got help from other people, but I still didn't understand. And now I have a much better understanding. I'm still learning more every day, but I have a better understanding of it, and I just really wanted to share that in hopes that it may help you. Basically, I started with treats. Treats is a good way to get them to start engaging. Even if they're not doing it to be with you, even if it is just for the treats, I think to start with, to get them to wake up a bit, but just giving them the choice and listening to the choice that they make, or even if they're just telling you something, just listening to what they're saying. Following through with that. So I think if you are starting to work with a shutdown horse, or you've noticed your horse is shut down, just knowing that they're not being disrespectful or lazy, that they're not against you, they're not trying to be disrespectful, they are not lazy. So often horses are labeled as lazy, but they are just shut down. And I know horses now that are, some of them that I've ridden recently, and they get slower as I'm riding them, and I realize they're shutting down, and I have to stop and go, why is this happening? So just listen to what they're saying, all the tiny things, the bucking, the kicking, the biting, head throwing, whatever, the wrinkles by their nose, are their eyes tense, all these little things, just listening to those signs and respecting them, because honestly, I really don't see why they should be respecting us. I think there should be a mutual respect, not that horse is not listening to me, it should respect me, it should do what I say. Why? What authority do we have, actually? So just listening to them and following through with that really, I think, has made the biggest difference for Sunny. And just being gentle, just remembering, even if they don't respond to something we do, like if we touch them, even though there's not an obvious big response, they can still feel it. So not to be hard on them, not to force them. they're not walking, if you're pulling on them, they're not walking, not to smack them, just to stop, listen, say, why is my horse doing this? And just to approach it gently and kindly. They really respond so well to that, even when it feels like you have to be hard on them. It's really, it makes a world of difference just to be gentle. So, yeah, that's all for this video. I really want to make one of actually a session with my horse. Dragon? Okay, boy. Yeah, I actually want to make one, like, of a session with my horse and just explain what's going on and all that. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed and that this can help you with your horse.